Hello, everyone. Welcome here live to the UGA bookstore right next to Sanford Stadium. My name is Brandon Adams. I'm very lucky today to be joined by the former Georgia punter, Cameron Nizelek, one of the guys that got a chance to enjoy a run to the college football playoff a year ago. He's here with us tonight for our Northside Hospital Postgame Show. We look forward to taking a bunch of your comments as we just saw Georgia in dominant fashion against Austin Peay, and we'll talk a lot about a lot of the good about the game that we just saw. And Cameron, there was certainly a lot of that to get to, but I guess off the top here, let's deal with something, and a lot of folks right now are maybe tuning in from their tailgate, or maybe they left their couch and started, doing an errand or something like that. You may have missed this fourth quarter of the game, but there was some news there in the fourth quarter on punt coverage, something that has been quite a topic for Georgia here so far in the month of August, now turning to September. James Cook, freshman running back, makes a very violent hit on a Austin Peay punt returner. It's ruled a targeting. Obviously, he's dismissed for the rest of the Austin Peay game. Cameron, as you know, that's not all that significant, but by rule he'll also miss the first half of South Carolina.
That's right.
And to not have a dynamic weapon like that for the first half against South Carolina is something that even here at the UJ bookstores raises the eyebrows of a lot of Georgia fans who may have just found that out once they heard us talking about it.
Absolutely. And you saw what James Cook could do on the field today. He's a very electric player. Obviously not a great decision there on the punt coverage team, but that's something that he's going to have to learn from, and it's something that, he might not have had to deal with in high school, but playing on special teams, and it's an important part of the game. You got to know the rules. When he waves his hand for a fair catch, you can't touch him, especially not in the head.
Yeah, my guess is you say he's got to know the rules, and obviously he does, and know what the proper procedure there is. My guess is he's going to find out pretty quick early in the week exactly how Kirby Smart and Scott Fountain, the special teams coach, wants him to approach that. I imagine they're going to love on him a little bit this week to make sure he gets that right in the future.
Absolutely. They're definitely going to be on him this week and making sure that doesn't happen again.
And, listen, you're actually a great one to talk about this because you were a great punter a year ago, and as a great punter, you also want great special teams around you.
Absolutely.
It's actually been a little bit controversial, at least in some circles, the fact that Zamir White, the five-star running back, injured himself punt coverage during a scrimmage. And, some Georgia fans would say, well, should you even have your best running backs or some of your top running backs being a part of that punt coverage situation there? Maybe it's the same thing for James Cook here, at least in the mind of some fans. But explain from the perspective of a punter why you want elite athletes like that running down there and tackling the punt returner.
Absolutely. Even if we look back to last year, we had on my punt team Roquan, Lorenzo, and Sony, all starters, all top picks in the draft this past year. So, when you have guys like that on your punt team and on special teams, it brings a different energy. It shows the team that it's not a play to take off, right? So a lot of times kids come in and they only play offense or defense, but it brings an energy to the team on special teams, and it's really a big part of the game, and it's something that influences the game, and you can win games that way. So.
Well, we'll take a lot of comments on this because I think we saw James Cook make the long run today. We saw him put his athleticism on display here. But when you think about, you do have Elijah Holyfield still. DeAndre Swift, obviously, was a big part of the early offensive game plan today. My expectation is he'll lead Georgia in carries next Saturday. You've still got, Brian Herring, who you depend on. So Georgia's not thin at running back yet, but with no Zamir White because of injury, with James Cook at least in the first half, you don't have quite as many running back options as you thought you would have. If you're Jim Chaney and Kirby Smart here, how much if you had to guess, how much would you say Georgia's going to miss Cook in that first half next week?
Yeah, I think it's definitely you're gonna miss him a little bit, but you saw what Swift can do, and Elijah and Brian, and you saw a lot of those guys getting into catching the ball out of the backfield. So they're all very versatile backs, and you're definitely gonna miss them a little bit, but I'm really confident in the way Swift is playing that he'll do a great job.
All right, we're going to talk a lot about the good things that happened for Georgia here today. That's Cameron Nizelek, the former Georgia punter. By the way, he's got his is that your SEC championship ring he's sporting there?
Check it out.
Boy, I tell you what, that kind of hardware it makes me feel very jealous because obviously I'm ring free. I don't even have my wedding ring on today, but it's kind of nice to see Cameron sporting that SEC championship ring. So if you're glad to see him, if you're glad to see that championship ring, give it a big like or a thumbs up there in the comment section. We'll look forward to taking a lot of your comments here throughout our program and obviously deal with kind of everything that did happen for the good here for Georgia today. Let me start with a question on Facebook coming in from Georgia Boy Middleton, who asked about the pass rush today getting sacks. And, I have to go back and look at the full numbers here to see what Georgia did in terms of its pass rush. Didn't see a lot of sacks. And I guess I'm going to chalk this up to, and in some ways this is going to be relevant for South Carolina again next Saturday too, but the low sack numbers, low pass rush numbers, this is an Austin Peay team that wanted to play really fast.
Absolutely.
Now, first of all, obviously they can't just line up and run straight at Georgia, so they've got to be quick with the misdirection. So if you didn't see the best of the Georgia pass rush today, I'm going to attribute that more, I think, to the style of play that Austin Peay's comfortable with, more so than what maybe Georgia was not doing defensively.
Absolutely. You didn't really see Austin Peay try to throw the ball down the field, a lot of quick, slant and out of the backfield type passes, so they didn't have as much time to get to the quarterback today.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, we'll take a lot of your comments here. It's the Northside Hospital Postgame Show. Cameron Nisley, my name is Brandon Adams. By the way, you'll notice we're wearing this great-looking new Nike shirts here from the UGA bookstore. And, right below us, one floor down, you can kind of go and check out everything at the UGA bookstore, all the various apparel, the 47 brand, the Nike brand. I believe the kids call these blade collars. I think that's what the cool kids call these. It's sort of like what you see Tiger Woods wearing on the PGA Tour and the Nike style here. You said this is what the coach was wearing for the national championship game as well.
Yeah, the coaches wore these kind of blade collars for the playoff game and for the national championship.
Absolutely. By the way, great looking video on our feed here today too. Seeing Georgia kind of run out from that brand new west end zone. Jacob Mahaffey on YouTube says Cook doesn't need to get that many touches in the first half against South Carolina, but that still stinks that he'll miss that time. And Jacob, I guess I sort of agree with you on this, that on the one hand, was he going to get a lot of touches in the first half? We did see games last year where Georgia gave 4 backs carries in the first half. It's not unheard of for Jim Chaney to utilize that sort of fourth option there when it comes to running backs. I think for me, though, and Cameron, you can speak to this very well, it's more the thing of you want South Carolina worried about it, even if you don't do it,
Absolutely.
right? That speed, you want them thinking about, especially speed to the outside, because that just sort of spreads the defense out to open up some lanes in the middle. Even if you don't give him the football, making South Carolina think he might get it becomes a real weapon.
Exactly. You saw how explosive he could be even on the limited touches today, and that's something that South Carolina would have to game plan a lot more for if he was able to play in the first half.
All right, it's the Northside Hospital Postgame Show. Whether you're an athlete in youth sports or a weekend warrior, the Northside Hospital Sports Medicine Network keeps you in the game and ready for action. So if you'd benefit from that, simply go to the website, sportsmedicine.northside.com, or give them a call at 1-855-NH-SPORT. It's great to have Northside Hospital here for our Northside Hospital post-game show. Let's kind of dive into everything that we did see and sort of like from this game. This is obviously a game in which, Georgia really throttled Austin Peay for the most part, and a lot of folks came by to see us here today at the UGA bookstore where we're broadcasting from, and I think the one sort of consistent theme, Cameron, that I've heard from a lot of Georgia fans who saw the game was that Georgia just brings out players in waves. Absolutely. With all due respect to the team that you played on last year, I think from just a sheer numeric standpoint, this may be a deeper team. Remains to be seen if it has the same kind of senior leadership, veteran presence like a graduate transfer like you brought to that roster. But in terms of just overall depth, I've been watching Georgia football my entire life. I don't know that they've ever been deeper than they are right now.
Absolutely. You saw on the first drive, I think 6 different guys caught the ball. So we have a ton of weapons on the offensive side of the ball, and obviously, like you talked about, the veteran leadership, that's kind of something that will remain to be seen. But right now, you got to love the explosiveness that we have on the offensive side.
By the way, on our Facebook comment section, Ishmael J. Says, what does Cameron Nisley think about Jay Camard? And that's obviously a perfect question to ask. I was telling you, I thought he really, obviously a couple touchbacks here, but, man, he showed a strong leg, the freshman punter here from Norcross.
Absolutely, and I got to know Jake throughout the recruiting process, and I'm really glad he came to Georgia. He's the top punter coming out of high school, and he's got an unbelievable leg. You saw it today. I think he hit a couple huge punts. Obviously, you got to be a little more cautious of where you are on the field. We don't want touchbacks, and the one play he put in the middle of the field on the one where James Cook got in trouble. But otherwise, he's got an awesome leg, and he's going to do great for us.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. On the punt that led to the Cook penalty, we were actually watching here from the UGA bookstore, and you said this before we even saw the result of the play. Oh, that's the middle of the field. That's not where that's supposed to be.
Right.
For those who've never paid as much attention to special teams as the other phases of the game, tell us what was going through your head as a guy that was doing that job just less than a year ago.
Yeah, so Coach Fountain really preaches not only hang time, distance, but where you put it on the field is very important. Because if you're supposed to be going right and you put it on the left side of the field, all your coverage guys are going the wrong way. So that's something that he's going to have to work on. But, he hit the ball really high and obviously forced a fair catch that James Cook didn't see.
This is probably a dumb question, I'll admit, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We see a lot of freshmen make their debuts, and there are a lot of positions where it would seem like, okay, it's obviously difficult to do this as a freshman because either it's physically challenging or it's cognitively challenging. You have to think about a lot of stuff on the field there. For a punter, what is it like as to be a freshman doing this straight out of high school compared to you in your, fifth year a year ago, how much does experience help for a punter, and conversely, how much does inexperience maybe challenge Camarda right now?
Yeah, I think it's definitely tough coming into and playing in front of 93,000 versus, high school speed, and you have a lot more time in high school to get rid of the ball, and he's just something he's going to have to develop, but I think he did a really good job, and I'm really excited about how he's going to do the rest of the year.
Justin Carter says it was an awesome game. It was hot, but it was awesome. And Justin, I'll agree with you. And, I was going to brag on myself here today because, Cameron, one of the things you're not aware of is one of the things the people in our comment section love doing every single post game more than anything else is making fun of me because I have a big fat face and I'm in the sun all day long, and I just get baked. I just get, my face will be as red as my shirt. Today, I finally decided to put a little sunscreen on this morning before I left. I was like, I'm going to show them I'm not going to be sunburned at the end of the day. I think I'm still sunburned. I put the 55 sunscreen all over my face. I think I'm still sunburned because, it was really scorching out there today.
Yeah, the first half was unbelievably hot. Luckily, I was sitting where the shade kind of caught me for the second half, but it was definitely a hot one out there.
Kibo Weir mentions D'Angelo Gibbs ball hawking out there today. Happy for that kid. We're going to talk more about D'Angelo here in a moment. By the way, if you're just joining us, Jeff Sintel going to stop by and see us here too on our Northside Hospital Postgame Show. But on Kibo's comment here, I guess a quick thought. D'Angelo Gibbs, Natrez Patrick. How happy are you for them, for what they've overcome, back out there playing? Kirby Smart was pretty forthright during the summer that he was looking for a lot of stuff from these guys.
Yep.
Really judging them, not just in terms of are they football ready, but are they emotionally, spiritually ready, kind of away from football to kind of come back and be a part of this program. And it sounds like whatever it was that Kirby needed to see from them, he's seen that. They were back playing today. As a guy that used to call them teammates, I know that must be gratifying for you.
Yeah, those are two really good guys, and they've been in some trouble, but they work hard. They do what they're asked in practice, and they've been they've challenged to step up in the classroom and off the field, and I think they've done a great job, and I'm happy to see them out there today.
On YouTube, Cameron Merrill says I was sunburned by 10 a.m. I really don't think that I was. I don't think I was sunburned until about halftime, but when I went into the restroom at halftime, looked myself in the mirror, I was like, you know what, I am sunburned here again. Mike Toomer says on to South Carolina. And, I guess, other than the Cook status here, I guess that's the big takeaway here is that for a Georgia team that sort of needed to take care of a dress rehearsal and then get ready for its SEC opener next week, I think that's sort of mission accomplished there in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's move on with our comments here. It's our Northside Hospital postgame show. Don't forget, Northside Hospital's got 10 locations in the Atlanta region. It is their sports medicine network is the network right there in your neighborhood. So when you need to take advantage of that, please make sure you do so. Check them out on the web at sportsmedicine.northside.com or give them a call at 1-855-NH-SPORT. It's great to have Northside Hospital as a part of our Northside Hospital postgame show here live from the UGA bookstore. All right, let me talk a little bit about Justin Fields here for a moment. He makes his debut today, with no disrespect to Jake Fromm, who obviously made some big-time throws today. For a lot of these fans, the curiosity factor with Justin Fields was off the chart here, and I understand what that's about. Cameron, as you know, I do a Georgia show every single day. We talk a lot about Justin Fields there. We got a chance to see Fields today. What did you see from Fields? What impressed you? What did you notice? What was your reaction to seeing a guy, and I don't even really know how well you even know Fields, but certainly a guy you probably heard a lot about.
Yeah, I've actually met Justin a couple times, and another really hard-working kid is in the playbook a lot, and I think he had a great debut today. He's very explosive. We got to see him show his wheels a little bit today, and his biggest run of the day, I actually think he missed a deep ball. It could have been a touchdown,
okay.
But so I think he has to probably sit in there, go through his reads a little bit more, but that'll come with experience. But when he gets out of the pocket, he's pretty elusive.
It's that age-old discussion here of, he's got the instincts that, and it's such a terrible cliche, and I apologize for it in advance, but it truly can't be coached, right? There are things that Justin Fields just sort of innately knows to do that other guys couldn't accomplish in an entire lifetime, and yet, falling on those instincts too much and not taking advantage of maybe the even bigger play. That's a lot of the story that we're going to see from Fields over the course of the season. And it remains to be seen how much he's going to play, say, next week against South Carolina. We saw a good bit of him today. It remains to be seen how much we'll see from him beyond that. But when we do see him, that's what we'll be talking a lot about. He did this, but he could have done that. This went for this many yards, but another decision could have gone for twice as many yards. It'll be the good, the bad, the ugly, sort of everything mixed in between. Right. That's a lot of what it'll be, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll get some comments. Mike Mazzell says that Justin Fields looked great also, and I think that's probably true. That if you're a fan and you were kind of thinking about Fields as a reason to kind of come out today and sort of brave the heat and the intensity, I think that excitement factor for him there was really a big part of what you saw there.
You know, all the fans wanted to see that he's the #1 player coming out of high school, and you know, he did what he could to do today. So I think fans are going to be excited about him.
Les Hobson on Facebook says Kirby's got something up his sleeve. Didn't see much aggressive blitzing. He's holding an ace. And, Lee, that may be true on the defensive side of the ball there. I think it may be true on the offensive side of the ball, too. You know, on the one hand, and we'll talk more about Demetrius Roberts in a moment, you know, we saw a lot of wide receivers involved in sort of the jet sweeps type stuff today. Is that going to be a big part of the Georgia offense, or is that just something for his buddy Will Muschamp to think about? You can almost say the same thing on this topic with Justin Fields, that, you know, there is something that Fields could do, and for the most part, I don't really favor like a special package of plays. Just let the guy be a quarterback with the regular offense. But if you wanted to flirt with that sort of special package, something to, you know, get a team like South Carolina even working a little bit of time during practice on maybe something they don't want to, you know, just being worried about all contingencies here. The weapon that is Justin Fields gives us a chance to do that.
Absolutely. He just brings a different dimension to the game, and it's something that teams need to prepare for because he's such an explosive player.
You mentioned that you met Fields a couple of times. A lot of people probably don't realize this, but if you go back to January before the national championship game, you know, even though they weren't eligible to play, Cade Mays did, you know, he practiced with y'all for a couple minutes before that game. Fields was still dealing with the finger, so he wasn't practicing, but he was actually sort of with the team, so to speak, you know, in the indoor facility before that national championship game. And for a lot of people, that probably they didn't realize that because obviously they were focused on, you know, Georgia getting ready to play Alabama. But, you know, it's one of the things about being an early enrollee. It just gives you that leg up because you get a chance to start being acclimated to Georgia football right away. And for a guy like Fields, even though he was dealing with the finger injury at the time, what he learned then, much like from the year before, what he absorbed then is something that he can put to use right now.
Absolutely. When those guys come in and they're able to learn kind of how we do things throughout the program, especially going into the national championship game, that's invaluable experience that those guys were able to get in for practice.
Over on the Facebook comment section, Eric Bielink says, no, Eric, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. He says that Justin Fields really throws that ball like a bullet. And, you know, to compare this to Jake Fromm for a moment, you know, obviously, if you're doing like the sort of the side, if it's like a carnival, you know, game, if you're trying to knock over a stack of milk jugs, you know, Fromm is not going to throw it quite as hard. He's not going to throw it quite as far as Fields is capable to. You know, Fromm gets the job done every single time, of course, but there is that sort of that little extra juice that Fields seems to put on it when he throws. That it's just definitely noticeable in the stadium.
He does. He throws a great ball, but at the same time, you can't deny what Fromm is able to do out there too. I mean, he's just got those intangibles that he's a winner, and he's got the team behind him as well. So
one of the things you also kind of saw today, and you know, I don't know what your preference is. I'd be, I guess, curious to find out in our comment section what the preferences from various Georgia fans are. You know, it almost seemed like there was a concerted effort, much like Kirby had explained some of the scrimmages. Georgia was seemingly trying to be a bit more balanced today. Now, they probably don't, you know, gain and I'll look at the full stats in a moment when we'll sort of see what it brings to the table here. But you know, you probably don't gain a whole lot from just sort of pounding it down the throat of Austin Peay. What are you going to really learn there? But in the sort of the early stages, sort of first half of this game, I mean, you saw something was sort of veering that direction of almost a 50-50 balance between run and pass, whereas on your team a year ago and previous Georgia teams the last couple of years, it's really almost been 2 runs for every pass.
Yeah, last year it was tough because we had, you know, 2 of the best running backs in the country and a quarterback who hadn't had the same experience. But this year, I think it's going to open up a lot of it. We have a ton of weapons at the receiving corps, so you know, I'm really excited about them opening up a lot more.
By the way, you'll be very happy to know, Cameron, that Enrique Murillo in our YouTube comment section is complimentary of you being a smooth talker. This is actually Cameron Nislik's broadcasting debut here.
First time.
But yeah, he's already silver-tongued and you know, nice and easy. And listen, you know what I do and get the chance to do for a living is so great because, you know, obviously we've all sort of grown up just sort of talking about football forever, and putting a microphone on and talking about football is no different than what you and your teammates probably talked about when you're all watching games in the locker room or anything else. I mean, for the most part, talking football is talking football, whether it's being, you know, being filmed and recorded or not, right?
That's right. I mean, I love the game, and it's something that I enjoy talking about.
Sidney Jackson says don't sleep on South Carolina. I don't think Georgia fans will be sleeping on South Carolina. I think there'll be a lot of Georgia fans and the Georgia team itself very focused on the South South Carolina Gamecocks, and we'll look forward to talking more about that coming up with you here on our Northside Hospital Postgame Show. And speaking of Northside Hospital, elite athletes, youth sports, weekend warrior types. It seems like for me, I'm probably more in the weekend warrior category lately. You kind of go out there, you play pickup basketball with your son, and all of a sudden your back's hurting, or maybe you mess up your knee, something like that. That's why you want to think about the sports medicine folks there at Northside Hospital. They got 10 locations in the Atlanta region. The Northside Hospital Sports Medicine Network is in your neighborhood, so you want to make sure that you reach out to them, whether it be sportsmedicine.northside.com or give them a call, 1-855-NH-SPORT. By the way, I'll also remind you, Jeff Sintel going to be here in just a moment. He'll join us to give us some thoughts from the Georgia locker room, the brand new Georgia locker room, as it turns out. He'll let us know what Kirby Smart had to say in his press conference. Cameron Nislik here. My name is Brandon Adams, live here at the UGA Bookstore. We're sporting brand new gear here, courtesy of the UGA Bookstore. It's the Nike Blade Collar shirts. And no matter what apparel brand you prefer when it comes to Georgia apparel, it's right down there on the first floor here at the UGA Bookstore. So please come check them out before every Georgia home game or anytime you're around in Athens. All right, somebody in our comment section a moment ago mentioned Demetrius Robertson. Let's talk about him for a moment. This is another one of those moments in which he takes the jet sweep, goes for a long touchdown here today, and I think ultimately Robertson is going to be a real lethal weapon for Georgia, obviously catching the football. His speed, when you saw him sort of put that toe in the turf and then just take off, he's got that blazing speed. But if you're Will Muschamp in South Carolina, now you got something else to think about. Are they going to hand the ball to him? They tried to do a very similar play to Tyler Simmons a little earlier in the game. There was a penalty there on that, which got brought back, but that was clearly something that Georgia was showcasing a bit today. But when it's Robertson in that situation, like the touchdown he scored, he is a dynamic athlete.
Yeah, I think the coaches are doing a good job of getting the ball in the hands of some of our most explosive players, and he took that ball 73 yards to the house, and no looking back. He's going to be a great player, and really excited about his speed and that he was able to play right away. I think that's important for us.
James Crump, by the way, in our Facebook comment section with South Carolina looming, someone a moment ago said, hey, nobody's sleeping on South Carolina. James Crump says, Kirby Smart's not letting Georgia do any sleeping on anyone. He's just going to let the media and the haters sleep on Georgia. And I guess, Cameron, explain this to us here for a moment, because we saw last year you guys on the team that wins the Rose Bowl, go to the college football playoff, such a killer instinct, right? Whether it be blowing out rivals like Tennessee and Florida, maintaining the tenacity in the fourth quarter to beat Notre Dame on the road, what happened against Oklahoma and that just shootout with the Heisman Trophy winner Baker Mayfield. It's very easy to sort of, lionize, what Kirby Smart was doing behind the scenes, but you were there to sort of see it. How is it that you guys bought into what a lot of the fans that are watching right now hope this team sort of carries over into the season? How was it that edge, that killer instinct was established?
That's something that we develop right in practice. Coach Smart has done an awesome job of kind of setting the tone early, and we never overlook an opponent. And I think you're going to see that next week at South Carolina. We're going to prepare just as hard as you would for any other team, and he does a great job preparing the guys.
Spencer Moore says, I was right about Auburn. Is that final? Did Auburn we now have a different game on our television here. Connor Riley, is that final? Did Auburn beat Washington? That may be a final. Auburn may have beaten Washington here coming into Atlanta. That's a pretty big one there for that. Pretty interesting stuff there with the Auburn Tigers, so that indeed is the case. Over on YouTube, Pine Saw Lemon Sense says, that's what a YouTube commenter name, says, BA, what's your prediction for the next week's game? And do you think the number 2 quarterback's going to touch the field? Thanks, love the show. Pine Saw, we appreciate you checking on the program. So, Cameron, here is my opinion about next week, and you can tell me if it's too much. Obviously, I'm a Georgia fan. I want Georgia to win, and sometimes you can sort of think of this as maybe being, an opinion colored by the fact that that's what I would prefer. I think South Carolina's in some real trouble next week.
I think so too.
I think they're in some real trouble. And listen, if Cameron's playing on the team, he can't say that, right? Kirby Smart's going to have him, locked in the closet if he's acting like he's looking past South Carolina. But now, from the perspective of the ex-player, of the graduate from the program, you just look at the two rosters. What Georgia showed today. I haven't really seen a lot from South Carolina and Coastal Carolina as of yet, but I think I know a lot about South Carolina already. They have good wide receivers, and Jake Bentley's probably going to be a pretty good quarterback. But what I saw from Georgia today was a lot of depth and a lot of talent, and that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, I'm just not sure South Carolina's going to be able to handle all the weapons that we have. just you saw today, I think we're just scratching the surface on what we can do on the offensive side. So really the defense will be a good test for us next week, but it's going to be tough to stop the offense.
We're going to get Jeff Sintel here coming up in just a moment on our Northside Hospital postgame show. Jeff had a chance to talk and hear from Georgia coach Kirby Smart in the postgame press conference. He'll give us some thoughts on that, and we'll continue to take a lot of your comments. It's the Northside Hospital postgame show here live from the UGA bookstore. We got the Nike apparel on. We're talking about Northside Hospital. They're going to take good care of you, and they're going to be with us here all season long on the Northside Hospital postgame show. We've got Jeff Sintel coming up in just a moment. We may be looking for a way to cover the screen to get Jeff on here, but nonetheless, we'll get him here in just a moment. Ishmael J, by the way, in the Facebook comment section says, South Carolina going to be fired up and going to try to stretch the field, worried about that a bit. And, yeah, clearly that's the one thing that I think the Gamecocks do well. And if you're looking at one position group where if you compare that to what Georgia brings to the table, one area in which South Carolina can match up there, whether it be comparing wide receivers or wide receivers versus defensive backs. Deebo Samuel, who did not play against you a year ago,
that's right,
was injured. He's back healthy now. I think he's in the short list of candidates for top player in the SEC.
Is, yeah.
I think he'd be a first-round draft pick. That's a guy to deal with. Brian Edwards, the receiver on the other side, is also a very talented receiver. So that's the one position group where next week I do give South Carolina a lot of respect. They are pretty good at the wide receiver spot.
And Deebo Samuel's explosive in the return game as well, so that's something you got to keep in mind.
All right, we're going to get Jeff Sintel coming up here. We're going to get him on the program here. We'll bring in Jeff and talk to him a little bit, find out everything that's going on there on that. We'll let him just sort of jump into our conversation right as we're having it here on our Northside Hospital post-game show. While we're doing that, and this will actually be a great thing to sort of bring Jeff in on. Couple interesting surprises in the starting lineup here today, and in terms of debates that had been had. We had been sort of wondering who the left guard was going to be. Kendall Baker obviously manned that spot. We thought he might do that. There had been some talk of a freshman being there. Cade Mays had gotten a look there to kind of start the summer off a bit. It's actually Solomon Kinley, a guy that did start for y'all a good bit a year ago. Kinley gets that start at left guard. You've obviously got a lot of beef there when it comes to Kinley, but also a guy that's sort of been in this program now for a couple of years.
Yeah, Big Solly. He has experience that we saw last year, blocking for some of the best backs in the country. So, I think the coaches felt comfortable with him, and obviously he got the start today.
And then the other thing that I think, kind of really fascinating here when it comes to, who's going to replace Roquan Smith. Obviously that had been something we talked about a lot, sort of, really since January. It's, you look at the plays that Roquan Smith made, Butkus Award winner. This is a guy that, kind of does so much there. And you said, well, sort of who's going to be that guy, starting off here today. You got a little bit of a tip-off when Juwan Taylor was named one of the captains. He and, Crumpton, being captains was sort of maybe a hint that they may be kind of involved in the situation a little bit. But Taylor's on the field there early. He and Monty Rice there together. It's still going to be a lot more of Natrez Patrick. You're going to see Tate Crowder in that role a bit as well. But obviously, in the early going here, at least for week one, Juwan Taylor was one of those guys that we weren't sure about, kind of got that nod to get his chance to sort of fill in for some of the productivity that Roquan Smith brought to this team a year ago.
And as Coach Smart's talked about, you can't really replace a guy like Roquan Smith, and that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to, step in and fill a role on the team. And, we saw a lot of guys get some time in the linebacking core. So until, we face a good test and kind of see how those guys do when the bullets are flying, I think you're going to see definitely a big mix.
Yeah, and Jeff Sintel's coming in here. We'll kind of bring him in on that. I noticed that Akil Crumpton got the first punt return today. McCole Hartman had done a lot for y'all a year ago, but Crumpton sort of gets that first punt return here today. That's another guy that we'd heard some whispers from, and I'll let Jeff talk about this a bit as well as Jeff. Hospital postgame show here, but Crumpton's a guy that must have been practicing lights out, Cameron, in the month of August, because reportedly he'd gotten a lot of work during a lot of the scrimmages, the wide receiver position, and got that first punt return of the season as well.
Yeah, I think he's done a good job. He did a great job for us last year, especially in practice. I've seen Crump catch a lot of good punts, and Miko was out there as well, so you get to see both of them. I think they bring a little something different, so it's good to see both of them out there.
Let me bring in Jeff Sintel on this. Jeff, I want to find out in a couple of minutes what you may have heard from the Georgia locker room, also any recruiting nuggets you want to give us. We'll always sort of mine some of those before we're all said and done here, but we're kind of in the middle of talking about here on our Northside Hospital postgame show from the UGA bookstore, some of those starting position battles that had been ongoing. You saw Solomon Kinley start at left guard today. UGA. You saw Jawan Taylor early on the field as the starter at the inside linebacker position, maybe being a captain was sort of a tip of the hand of that going down. You saw Crumpton get a chance to be the first punt returner there. When Georgia forced a third down early in the game in the first quarter twice, you saw William Poole kind of working into that star position there a little bit. What did you make of some of those position battles, to say nothing of Tyson Campbell? Maybe not a huge surprise that Campbell is the starting cornerback, just given his accolades and kind of what Kirby Smart has said about him recently. What did you make of some of those debatable starting positions and who actually ended up getting the nod?
Well, first of all, quick shout out to Cameron. I mean, this is probably, we're stepping up. We got Ivy League brains here, man.
I told him before we started the show, and I don't know if I said this on air or not, this is probably the first Ivy League graduate. For a lot of Georgia fans will remember, Cameron graduated from Columbia before he came to UGA. This is probably the first Ivy League graduate I've even spoken to.
I was wondering, this just flashed through my head as we sat down. You could call this hang time with Cameron. We really could.
You could do that. I don't know.
Like it.
I'm not really allowed near the Ivy League. If there's a kudzu league somewhere, that may be a little bit more close to what I could be around. I don't know that I would be allowed to the Ivy League.
Well, first of all, glad to have you on our show, and because it's like, I think the Georgia program is really different in how they look at all three phases. That's the quickest way to lose a game is on special teams. I mean, sometimes I just shook my head when, like, Georgia has 4 or 5-star elite starters in the second half of this game. I mean, I think the one thing that maybe is the biggest takeaway from this game for me, at least on the field, is that kind of effort play from James Cook. Now, James Cook, I don't even know if he saw him in the post-game press briefing afterward. Coach Smart even said, I didn't even see the fair catch.
Yeah.
And that's disappointing because, Georgia says as a staff, they teach the guys to break down. And the huge thing there is he's out of this game, and he also sits the first half against Carolina.
We started the show by talking about that, and Jeff, I think you're going to feel a little bit differently about this when you see it on video. I think Cameron and I both have the same opinion on this. Whether the fair catch was obviously called or not, this was clearly a situation where Cook was leading with his head. This is not me being critical. It's his first college game. You're going to learn a lot of lessons here. But when you see the film, what you're going to come to the conclusion of, it's not an issue of Cook playing hard when he didn't know a fair catch had been called. He clearly was sort of eyes down, leading with the head. I don't think the officials had much of a choice there on that one. And I say that as a guy that would really like to see James Cook in the first half next week. When you see the replay here, I think you're going to have the same opinion we do. Officials didn't have much of a choice.
It was also a really good hang time punt, and the returner saw that early, so he threw up the fair catch signal, and James Cook's probably getting off a block at that point, so he probably didn't see it, but he did throw it up early. So.
Did you guys talk about Jake already? I mean, like he's called like Thunderfoot already. And then would you rather? What do you think Coach Smart is saying after one of those 55-yard punts? Is Scott Fountain going, oh man, inside the 5, inside the 10? Or I mean, that's a freshman uncorking some 55-yarders in his first ball game, though.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about it earlier. He's got an unbelievable leg, and he's going to do great things for the Georgia program. But we've got to be a little bit more aware of where you are on the field because we don't want touchbacks as it eats 20 yards out of your net, and that definitely hurts.
That is Cameron Nislek, the former Georgia punter. We're lucky to have him as part of our Northside Hospital Postgame Show. My name is Brandon Adams. It's great to have you with us as well, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. It's good to have Dog Nation's Jeff Sintel in here. We'll talk to him a lot about what happened in that Georgia locker room here in just a moment. Let me deal with Terry Godwin here for a moment, though, before we do that. It was one of the big stories early in the game. I'd say it probably broke somewhere around 2 p.m. when Godwin walks on the field. He was with Zamir White. He was with Tyreek McGee. And Godwin, much like them, was not wearing the customary silver breeches. He was wearing more street clothes. He was out for today's game. I guess quickly on this, any words on Godwin coming from the Georgia locker room a moment ago?
Coach Smart said afterward in the press briefing that he thought Godwin had a good last couple of days. And Kyrus Jackson was another guy that he thought maybe could have won if he had to go. But now you're looking at, Terry, let's face it, this is not CIA.
Yeah.
You don't put Terry Godwin when he's in any way limited or a little bit shaky, you don't pull him out there for Austin Peay. You save the bubble wrap on him until South Carolina.
And Cameron, I was sharing my opinion about this with you before our show started today. If you go back to 2 Wednesdays ago, when the season was still more than a week away, when Kirby Smart was talking about Terry Godwin, he became very sort of optimistic. He was practicing more and doing more stuff. It's almost like when the calendar turned to Monday and it became game week, the line changed. And I'm not telling you that Kirby Smart was intentionally being misleading, but the way that he was discussing Godwin changed. All of a sudden, it's not minor knee injury anymore. Now it's calf injury. And all of a sudden, what had been a very sort of hopeful discussion about how much he had been practicing sort of became a little something different. You almost sort of got to the point there where you realize, oh, wait a second, it is still Austin Peay. And as much as I want to see all these players out there playing, there's, as Jeff sort of pointed out, there was really no great advantage to having Godwin out there when you can give him that extra week of rest and really kind of get him out there for a game that you do need him against South Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Terry, in my opinion, the best receiver on the team, and it's not something that you need to put him out there for, especially if you're close to being fully healthy. You want to give it some extra time, because that's really when a re-injury happens, is when you're not 100% ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're here tonight with Northside Hospital. Of course, their sports medicine experts are going to take good care of you when you get banged up, whether it be playing around a golf or pick up a basketball with your daughter, touch football with your son, whatever you're dealing with. A lot of times these sort of injuries happen. When they do, Northside Hospital sports medicine experts will take good care of you. You can see more about their story at sportsmedicine.northside.com, or you can give them a call, 1-855-NH-SPORT. That's 1-855-NH-SPORT. We're also here at the UGA bookstore sporting these great-looking brand-new Nike shirts. And if you want the stuff that the coaches wear, as Cameron said before, this is what the coaches were wearing for the national championship. If you want that, the UGA bookstore is the place to get it. Jeff, I want to hear a lot more from you and what you may have seen, sights and sounds from the stadium. You got a different perspective than Cameron or I did. But let's also talk here for a moment about something that came up in the comment section a little earlier, and that was the return to action for D'Angelo Gibbs and the return to action for Natrez Patrick. Now, Jeff, you know me well. From a football standpoint, I want Georgia to have the best 85 they can get. That obviously includes Natrez Patrick and D'Angelo Gibbs. There's a practical issue here I'm glad to see these guys back because I think they help Georgia. But as Cameron and I were sort of touching on a moment ago, there's also this sort of a feel-good story at work here as well, because I think that you, as well as anyone, because of how well you know D'Angelo Gibbs' family, can speak to what Gibbs has overcome to be to the point where he is right now. What Patrick, and some people would say, well, these are mistakes of their own doing. Certainly in the case of Patrick, that may be true, and yet still a lot of work goes on to sort of overcome all of that. I think it's a nice story to see both Patrick and Gibbs back playing again today, and I look forward to seeing an even more expanded role for them throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I've got kind of strong opinions on this, especially maybe the high school player, and then maybe one or two chances in college. I do feel that the young person that makes a mistake, if you cut them loose, then you lose the chance to positively affect their lives. Now,
100%.
I know all the shenanigan college football fans going to go, yeah, but if D'Angelo Gibbs was a walk-on, if Natrez Patrick wasn't a starter, things would be different. Well, I think that's the real world. Sometimes corporate assets get treated differently than other corporate assets, and I tell you, D'Angelo had a couple of plays. There was one where he bowed his head, didn't have really good heads up for him with his tackling, but then a couple reps later, he almost delivered a devastator on somebody, man. He had an incredible play, and then there was one play where he was matched up in coverage where he just closed down really fast on a back coming out of the flats, and that just helps Georgia, because Kirby Smart alluded to in the post-game press conference, he said that really can't afford anybody getting hurt back there. D'Angelo, if you saw him today, he worked at star, and then he also worked at safety. That's what he does. William Poole got some work in there as well, and I had a good conversation with him after the game. He came into Georgia, really tough kid, hard worker, hard-nosed, but he said simply, man, you got to know these plays backwards and forwards, because when you turn in B's in Georgia's film rooms and in their DB room, you don't play.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, Cameron. It's obviously a different position than you played, but, William Poole's a guy that we've gotten to know. He, grew up in the Atlanta area. He's got a great story in terms of, how he, got to Georgia. He's obviously a guy that a lot of fans really like, but like a lot of players in this team, when the roster's so deep, the flip side of that is, unfortunately for some players like William Poole, who's good enough to play a lot of programs, you're kind of waiting your turn a little bit. And for a lot of those 2017 defensive backs Georgia signed, as you know, last year on the team that you played on, they were waiting their turn. Give us an idea of like the mental toughness you have to show to sort of come to practice every day and just get beat on and work to know that your time for playing is not this upcoming Saturday, it's a season from now. But for a guy like Poole, he seems to have made good use of that time. What does it take for, from a mental toughness standpoint, to prepare yourself 1 year for your chance to play, which is going to come the following year?
I think a lot of it, too, is just buying into the team. Coach Smart, really preached about your role, and that's something, he might not have been on the field, but he was definitely having an impact in practice. He's a guy that, flies around and makes plays in practice. So he's helping the team get better, and I think, you're going to see him on the field this year too.
All right, Jeff, do you mind, before we hear from you a lot on what may you have heard in the locker room, can we take a few comments here before we get to that?
Sure, be glad to.
And by the way, did you see your boy Cameron Nisley's got his SEC championship ring on today?
No, man, look at that.
That's some pretty nice hardware right there.
Cameron, do you, I don't know, you go out with a lady or you go out to do you bring that thing out, or is it only for, marquee Georgia appearances, man?
So, we got these at the G-Day, and I haven't worn it since, so I figured today for the first game would be a good day to break it out.
No doubt about that whatsoever. I'd be sleeping in that thing. I'd actually get mine sort of blown up the size of a championship belt, be wearing it around my waist all the time.
It's almost too heavy, though. It's uncomfortable.
Do you shimmy that thing? How do you clean that thing? What do you?
I haven't really worn it yet, so I guess I'll have to figure that out.
Very gaudy, very gaudy.
Green Soldier says it's exciting to see this much potential out of a lot of positions. Guys, what do you think feels the strongest position, and which position right now needs the most work? And Jeff, you're a good one to sort of speak out on that. You had your opinions come into the game. Anything you see today change in terms of somebody that may have popped, or maybe something that I mean, how does what you saw over the course of this 60 minutes change what your view of the depth chart was kind of coming into today?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You saw some wrinkles. It's funny, Georgia has decided how they're going to figure out not recruiting fullbacks. They're just going to recruit 5-star tackles.
Could you believe that?
And make them H-backs while they wait their turn to start.
And, Cameron, you were explaining this before the show, and I want to hear from you on this because you can kind of shed some light on, kind of maybe what this has been. But you should have seen the scene in the press box. I'm, fumbling around trying to grab some binoculars. When I see this gigantic 42 and this gigantic 44, wait, because they're not listed on the on the roster. Wait, who is this? And so you get your binoculars out and you realize, oh, that's Cade Mays and that's Justin Schaefer. That's such an embarrassment of riches to have a guy like Cade Mays, who'd be starting at right tackle for Tennessee right now, playing fullback for Georgia.
So here's the funny part. Coach Smart, and this will probably sound just like Kirby, after the game, he was remarking, shutout win, lots of points. He didn't like the body language. He thought it wasn't a clean effort level game, and he also kind of chagrined about when he someone asked him about using those guys as kind of transformer fullbacks. He said, well, we didn't do a whole lot with those guys, those road graders back there. He's like, I don't know what its purpose it served, and we showed it. Now we're going to see how South Carolina defends it.
And Cameron, explain this. You were talking about another reason why it's kind of nice to sort of put that non-offensive line number, the 40-something number, one of the values when you have a Mays or a Schaefer dressing out in the 40s, it helps Georgia another way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps on special teams. You saw it last year. Alden Bynum wore 42 as well, and if he went in, he flipped it to a 60 number. So it's something that he's playing the tight end position on field goal. Now, if something happens, a bad snap or a fake, he's now an eligible number to catch the ball.
Yeah, that's
and
really
then also both Cade and I believe Schaefer was the other guy. They're both in the Shield on punt team, so they're also eligible if something were to go wrong.
That's a really interesting point to bring up. By the way, Jeff, in our Facebook comment section, I don't see the name anymore. I apologize, but somebody did bring up Adam Anderson in the comment section.
Whew, did you see that leveler?
I don't think I actually saw the big hit there. I mean, what did you see from Anderson today?
Well, he got in there, and he flashed, and this is going to show people's ages here a little bit, and I want everybody in the comment section to kind of date themselves or undate themselves. 56 is a boss number.
It's so good.
That's Lawrence Taylor. That is the guy that, it's funny, Georgia, now I wrote about this week. Everybody has this fascination with the low numbers. If you look on Georgia's roster.
Yeah, listen to this now. This is a crazy stat.
From 38 down, there are 59 guys on the team that have a number from 38 down. And there's 2 1s, there's 2 2s, there's 2 3s, there's 2 9s, and you're allowed to do that because of the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. But you look at what they're doing in a lot of positions, and it was kind of funny listening to Kirby Smart afterward. There were 3 or 4 things that just jumped out at me, unpacking them. He said Justin was flying around a little bit too much, Justin Fields. I don't know if everybody saw that play where Holyfield scored, the 18-yard run that was dazzling. It's probably deserving of a lot of highlight reels. Well, Justin is right there down, crossing the goal line with him, trying to put the final block on that. And Kirby was like, we got 2 quarterbacks. We got very fragile. We got very nice little chandelier quarterbacks right now. We do not want to get dust on those boys. That was pretty interesting. And then you look at everything Georgia did. James Cook, to me, he's not playing in the first half, but the way Georgia used a couple of pieces, DeAndre Swift in the beginning, I think he had 45 yards rushing and 33 yards receiving. From really, we're going to call it vanilla. Has the word vanilla came up yet?
No, but it probably should have, because that's a lot of what it was today.
And Fromm's 12 out of 14. He threw a lot of checkdowns. Brian Harrion flashed.
We know what Fromm's capable of doing. We didn't need to see him put that on display today. We know what he's capable of doing. And so this was just this is one of those days where you're content to let him do just enough, because his biggest throws are going to come in his biggest moments. This is a guy that led Georgia to a Rose Bowl win a year ago, Cameron. We're going to see the biggest throws from Jake Fromm when the level of competition is much higher.
Absolutely, like that Notre Dame game right to Terry Godwin.
Without a doubt.
Definitely.
2 cool points. It was really funny, kind of, when you're looking at everything and the guys are talking about what Georgia was doing after the game. You saw, with a lot of cases, Cook's the storyline, but to me, and this is pretty funny, knowing how well D-Rob and recruiting was intertwined with Coach Smart. Coach Smart had 2 good ones in the press conference. He was a little clever. He said he talked about how Demetrius is still not in shape. He thought that when he scored, it didn't look like he looked like he was winded on that score. It looked to me like he was in 3rd gear the whole time. And this is a kid that's got 6-speed transmission probably. Right. And he even said, always the coach, always the motivator. He said, I thought if he gets tired like that on a breakaway, he's probably going to get caught not scoring the SEC. So we need him to improve his conditioning.
But both, Cameron, you and Jeff both here for a moment. And this is something we have, Jeff, talked a lot about. If you're Will Muschamp, and this is just one more thing to think about, because, and I hate to make this comparison, a lot of Georgia fans are going to revolt at the idea of this, but it almost becomes like an Auburn-style situation where, Auburn likes to run those jet sweeps to wide receivers, which makes it very tough to defend the running backs up the middle. It makes the Auburn offensive line at times look better than it actually is, because, the defense is spread out so wide. If Georgia's doing this, where you have to, we saw Tyler Simmons, as a play gets called back. We saw Simmons on a play similar to this. Demetrius Robertson gets sort of a jet sweep type deal. Now all of a sudden you don't know what to do, because you want to stack the line to stop the run, but now you have to worry about the horizontal. With Fromm and Fields, especially Fromm, who's going to likely be playing one against South Carolina, the vertical threat becomes an issue here. You really have to pick your poison if you're defense now.
Absolutely. You have so many weapons, and we saw that today. And one quick side note, Tyler Simmons, you mentioned, he was on sides in that national championship game.
How much do you love that, by the way?
Did you see his family? We'll have to get a picture of that up soon or tweet it out, but his whole family wore shirts today that says Tyler Simmons was on sides.
I need to get one. I'm the biggest fan of that.
And this is a better one, though. They got him a gift this year that I think his dad got him his gift that told me that says I was on sides. A personal T-shirt for Tyler Simmons.
All right, I want to hear more from you about what Kirby Smart had to say. Before that, let me remind you that it's our Northside Hospital Postgame Show. When you think about Northside Hospital and their sports medicine experts, they offer a full range of sports medicine service to prevent and treat injuries and improve performance. So go to the website to find out more about them. It's medicine.northside.com. That's medicine.northside.com, or check them out by giving them a call, 1-855-NH-SPORT. That's 1-855-NH-SPORT. All right, you had a chance to hear the rest of the Kirby Smart press conference. You've sort of given us some of what you heard from Coach Smart in there. What else from the coach sort of jumped out at you?
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Another nugget about D-Rob is he put in a little one-liner. He said, you know what, I bet if he had to do it over again, he tells me he wishes he would have went to Georgia to begin with.
Yeah.
But I think maybe...
Well, let me stop you on that for a second, because I was thinking about this during the game today. And, Cameron, for Demetrius Roberts, this is a guy that, we've been following now for a couple of years. Back in 2016, he almost came to Georgia, chose Cal instead, and obviously you went to a great academic school, so you understand the importance of academics. He valued that up at the University of California. When you and I were standing at the College Football Hall of Fame that day in spring of 2016, did I imagine just 2 years later we'd be watching him run a jet sweep for a touchdown? It's funny how the world can turn here when it comes to D-Rob.
Yeah, and it's also, speaking, I know a lot of the media tribe likes to sound like curmudgeons all the time, but I'm going to give a hat tip to Kirby and the staff for letting D-Rob come out after the game.
Oh, is that right? Spoke to reporters.
He was requested, and normally, that's kind of like Georgia's defense on 3rd and 4. You're not usually getting a lot of those things up the field, but they allowed D-Rob to come out. He was very gracious. He had a lot of time for the reporters and everything else, but I hope you guys have talked about this already. If I know you have talked about this already. The rotation under center. Were you happy with how Jake had the first quarter, and then you see Justin, and then you see Jake again, and then you see a lot of Matt Downing as well?
You saw a lot of Downing. Downing needed to play. the fact that he's in there and getting as much time, do you think Downing goes to South Carolina next week? I guess we'll find that out about the rotation.
I don't think he does.
Okay, so that'll obviously be something that has to be determined at a certain point in time. But yeah, I like the way that it worked out. Kirby Smart's obviously going to say, we have no plan for how we handle our quarterbacks. I don't think he owes it to me to tell me his plan. Right. But clearly today he had some idea of what he wanted to do, the rotation there on that. And for me, I did think it made some sense how they handled that. I do think you wanted to get Fields in the game sooner rather than later. I don't think you wanted to affect the rhythm of either quarterback, and I think the way he handled that today allowed that to remain true.
Yeah, I think he definitely wanted to see both quarterbacks this season started off, and I think they did both a good job of splitting the time there. But, I think Jake Fromm is going to see the majority of the time next week, and, yeah.
I mean, what did you think about it?
It's kind of funny, and I know the media let me call out the media again here. I kind of thought the headlines about Justin Fields leads a touchdown on his first scoring drive were a little snarky because all he did was give. Right. You saw D-Rob do D-Rob things. Probably
D-Rob's first touch. I mean, that's really the headlines. I think it's D-Rob's first touch.
Yeah, D-Rob scores a touchdown on Justin Fields' first drive. That's probably the way you need to.
Poor D-Rob. He's a support role player on his own story on his own touchdown there. But it kind of brings. I'm going to date myself for saying this. Howard Schnellenberger, who was the legendary former Miami coach, coached at Oklahoma, coached at Louisville. One of the things that he was very famous for was, I think for his entire career, he put his backup quarterback in for the first series of the second quarter every single game. And obviously at Miami, he had a lot of great quarterbacks. But so, the way that Kirby handled that, and I doubt he's thinking about Howard Schnellenberger, but the way that he handled that was resembling of how previous coaches in sort of bygone eras have done this, where like that time either late in the first quarter, early in the second quarter, is sort of thought of as a time to get backup quarterbacks involved for whatever reason.
Well, especially in a game like this.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen if Georgia would have had a kickoff classic game with Washington in the Dome. I would love to have seen how that plan would have unraveled because I think it might have unraveled a little different in a 0-0 ball game.
All right, well, let me ask you both this, and that's a perfect setup for this. I have been on record as saying this. I'm the biggest Jake Fromm fan in the world. I think if Georgia wins the national championship 2018, I think Jake Fromm's going to be the reason why. I'm a huge Jake Fromm fan. I do think Justin Fields takes a snap in the first half next week, though.
I mean, I don't know if he probably will, but I don't know if he's going to produce that DJ Shockley effect in that David Green game or whatever. I think it's just they need to prepare for it. Yeah. They need to see it. Yeah. But here's the one thing. There's the innuendo right now about the Alabama football team and the co-captains and everything else like that.
Oh, yes, I heard about this.
And holding separate meetings and half the team.
Nobody loves that more than me.
Well, why we got Cameron here? I mean, this doesn't affect us at all or Georgia or our coverage or anything, but how would you feel if a quarterback calls a team meeting and half the guys show up? I mean, what does that say to you about the locker room culture when that happens right there?
Yeah, I don't think that says good things.
No, I don't think so either.
I don't think that would have happened here, but
yeah, and I'm
players-only meetings.
Yeah, I'm 100% agree with Cameron Nislek on that, and he's obviously in the locker room. I'm not, so he can speak to it better than I can. But everything I think I know about this team from the outside, that scenario is the kind of thing that's not going to happen at Georgia. Wouldn't have happened with Easton and Fromm last year on the team you played on, right. And not likely to happen with Fromm and Fields on this team right now too, which makes it all the more juicy when those rumors come up of it happening somewhere else.
So I don't want to turn this into a hot seat from my friend Cameron over here, but I want to ask one truth serum question, and this is probably won't get you in trouble, but what is your honest reaction? You're one of those graduated has-beens. I think Ryan Rankin calls that himself a has-been a lot. He had a tweet today that he had a dad bod or something like that. What is your reaction to that locker room and knowing that I was a year away from all that?
Yeah, it's from what we were at last year, I don't know if most fans know this, but the locker room we were in last year and for the last however many years is really just a room. Yeah. There's no lockers in there. So it's just a room that we change in and get out. But
yeah, nobody that plays high school football that's watching us right now has a worse locker room than the one that y'all dressed in a year ago. It's bizarre because obviously, you think about Georgia being this pristine program, and yet, the locker room was not really befitting of that, and that's one of the reasons why Kirby pushed for it to be changed.
Exactly, and now that it is an unbelievable new space, and it's how it should be. These guys are doing a lot for the program, and they should be treated that way.
Let me take a quick comment before you dive back in there. P.D. Wheatstraw is asking about Tyson Campbell. It's a guy we talked about a little earlier. Y'all, Tyson Campbell's a star. I don't mean a star position. I mean
you
a
mean
star.
playing the star position?
No, that's not what I mean. Tyson Campbell's a cornerback, and he's going to be a star. I know he had missed a tackle, right off the top here today. It's his first game. You watch that young man run. Watch that young man run.
I'm just having fun here, but Adam Anderson didn't miss his first tackle in college.
No, come on.
But you can see what he's capable of. I know he had a really nice pass breakup early in the first quarter, so.
Listen. One of the things I'm writing about this week is I'm doing a freshman report on DogNation.com, and I'm going to tell you folks now. Listen, this is a tease here. If you don't learn like 19 things about Tyson Campbell by what I write this week, you can get your money back on the site.
Good. That's the stuff I want to be reading. I think Tyson Campbell's a big part of what Georgia's going to do this year. I look forward to reading those words.
So here's the thing that blows your mind, and I don't know if I've even told you this before, but I remember out of the opening. And Richard Sherman was there, who is seen.
This is a great story. Tell this story for the audience. They're going to love this.
Richard Sherman is seen as, everybody that knows NFL football. Oh, that's the gargantuan corner. That's the oversized, Norse god, Thor-looking corner because he's so tall. He's so big. He's so wide. Tyson Campbell's bigger than Richard Sherman, and he was that going into his senior year of high school. And he also runs a 10.4 in the 40, and he's also very tall and very long. But I spoke to a lot of guys after the game about him tonight, and he checks the size box, he checks the speed box, he checks the talent box. Came from a tremendous high school program that produced Sony Michel, but he's also very, very smart. And he wouldn't be playing right now, Brandon, if he was busting things and he was creating 19 gray hairs a day for Mel Tucker and Kirby Smart.
You can explain that. Even though it's a different position. I mean, August, because he's a summer enrollee. He was not here for the spring. He's a summer enrollee. You've got to come in and hit the ground running and start impressing right away. Now, they know what he can do because they've obviously recruited him and they've seen his film. But you got to show that's going to translate to the practice field level because of how intense the practices are. Yep. If you're Tyson Campbell, you got to impress a lot of people quick to kind of get into that spot, right?
He must have been very impressed because the defense that we run here at Georgia is a very complex defense, and guys struggle with it, coming from high school. So, he must have been in the playbook and in the film room all the time.
I'm going to give one warm and gooey thing for Brandon about Tyson Campbell because you do want to start up a Tyson Campbell fan club along with your Jake Fromm fan club.
You're going to hear me say this about a few players. If Georgia wins a national championship, he's one of the reasons why. Tyson Campbell, if he can live into this, if he can be this, that's a national championship-style cornerback, big and can run. That's what national champions have.
Well, Kirby Smart is like that affluent Georgia fan in Dunwoody that always gets a brand-new red polo shirt every season.
Blade collar, by the way.
Like this guy.
Look at the blade collar.
And he had the 2017 Great Coaches first half edition, second half edition. But he somehow ends up with the very nicest, hot off the presses shirt every year. And that's the way Coach Smart goes about collecting players. He's like, I'm going to get the best ones every year. Yeah, there's probably no dust on the other one. I only wore it 6 times last year for all 6 home games.
Sure.
But Tyson Campbell plays a whole lot. And my thought about Tyson Campbell now kind of crystallized in my head today. Tyson Campbell's opportunity at Georgia opens up because he's a great player, much like Andrew Thomas's did a year ago in terms of the tackle spot. Georgia still doesn't have a whole lot of great ready-made starting tackles in the SEC. Tyson Campbell can slide in there where the opportunity is, where, Dominic Sanders, Malcolm Parrish, Aaron Davis, a lot of secondary guys had exhausted their eligibility, and this is kind of a perfect storm for him to come in and get some reps.
All right, let me do a couple things here. We were talking about something a moment ago. I never got your thoughts on this. So my prediction is that Fields takes a snap in the first half next week. Now, Jeff says it may not be in like some, DJ Shockley-style role. Shockley was obviously a great dual-threat quarterback sharing time with Georgia in the early 2000s. I'm not telling you what's going to happen. I'm just saying under center, taking a snap as quarterback, I think it happens in the first half next week, at least one. Would you agree or disagree?
I think it just depends on the flow of the game. Okay. I think if we're playing well, it might be a good idea to mix things up, but I think it's really just going to depend.
I think he's got to earn it. I think he's got a great week of practice, and he's got to look really good in the game plan and the installs, and then that decision will be made. I don't think this will be we're going to keep Justin Fields fed with playing time, not for an SEC game on the road, not for a league game like that. I
think it's a fair point. Miriam1891, and I hope I pronounced this correct, in the YouTube comment section, was really excited about seeing Tyler Simmons in there early in the game there. I know the Simmons story is one that you follow real closely, Jeff. How excited were you about that, to see Tyler Simmons there in early in the game, and I guess I'll also add to that as well. Trey Blunt got his first catch in a Georgia uniform today. Played a lot as a freshman a year ago, but got his first catch today. How excited were you for those two wide receivers, two guys that you've covered a lot?
I will say this, and this is just modern business of college football. There's a lot of guys in the 2017 class. If they don't play a lot this year, and if they don't pop this year, that's just the reality that I think they may go somewhere else so they can play some college football. There's a lot of guys that everybody loves that story about the seniors that finally get their time. I think DeAndre Walker is a great example of this. But these are some guys that came in top 10 players, and the difference here is that they're not playing, and more talented guys or just as talented guys are coming in there. And, that's just the reality of this program. They're going to find guys that will push guys, or guys will never play.
How Love asked a really good question in the Facebook comment section. Jeff, I'll come to you for this one. He says that he thinks that South Carolina's going to be trying to line up Deebo Samuel on Tyson Campbell next week. We know the one thing about Georgia is they don't reverse their field and boundary corners very much. Whatever side you're on is the side you're on. They can put out whatever receiver that they want to over there. They're not doing a whole lot of changing who the boundary cornerback is for a lot of this kind of stuff. I told Cameron before you sat down that Deebo Samuel, I believe, is one of the best players in the SEC. But running with him next week, I don't mind Tyson Campbell being in that spot running with him next week. Now, is Samuel right now a better player than Campbell? Yes, he is. But do I think that Campbell can run with him and maybe match up with him? I don't mind putting him out in the fire right away.
Well, I don't think we're breaking any news here. We usually like to try to have fun and ham it up a little bit on our shows, but if anybody doesn't know yet, Georgia, when you watch the way they played last year, they definitely protected their secondary. They ran cover 2 a lot. They didn't want their they basically played it safe with their secondary. They didn't want guys to get beat deep. They didn't want to put a lot of pressure on their secondary. Not a lot of cover ones, not a lot of anything else.
But Kirby talked a little bit different about Campbell in that regard this week. He said that cornerback right now is an easy position for Campbell to play because
that guy.
Because they are going to do some man.
I mean, that's what I think might be different about Georgia. Everybody wonders about, Zoe and Davin and then Roquan. Well, here's a fishing analogy. Jake Fromm may not go back to the lake and catch all the same fish. He might go after some different fish and some different lures and come back with a cooler full of fish. What I mean there is Georgia can be just as effective as a defense, just in different ways and with different tools of doing that.
All right, we're late. We got to get ready to wrap up here. Let me get a couple final thoughts from you on something we haven't really talked a ton about yet. You both talked about the locker room a moment ago, but Cameron, how cool was it for you to kind of look over there and see Georgia coming out from the new side of the field, west end zone? I thought the entrance was, another media member used the word dramatic to describe it. I thought it was a great description. Very dramatic entrance. I love that sort of shotgun-style entrance, kind of long and narrow. I love the smoke. I just thought the whole vibe today was really big time. As a guy that used to run through that tunnel, on the other side, what did you think of the way that it looked?
I loved it. I thought it was definitely electric, and I'm sure the guys love running out from there. I know it breaks tradition a little bit, but I think it's going to be a good thing for us.
How about you, Jeff? You're going to hear from a lot of recruits here. You may have already heard from a lot today. What did they think about it?
Well, funny thing, another thing Kirby said was it maybe another humorous moment of his press conference. It was regarding the west end zone, and there was a point in the game, the halftime, where he's naturally drifting and taking a right turn going towards that old spot.
That's funny.
And he saw everybody else going to the left, and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "Coach, right that way." He needed a correction. He needed to go up on the board.
His get-back coach had to help him even back to the locker room there.
Go west, Coach Smart. Go west, young man.
And that's a great way to end this when Georgia blows out Austin Peay. A lot to like about it. Obviously, if you're James Cook, you're a little bit disappointed. You won't be playing the first half against South Carolina, but a lot of good news and a lot of other regards. Jeff Sintel, thanks for being a part of what we did here tonight.
Thanks, sir.
Cameron Nisley, it was great to have you a part of this as well. You obviously made a lot of Georgia fans proud last year, and you made a lot of fans really happy tonight with your commentary on the game. Of course, we'll be back all week at DogNation.com. Jeff's got some great stuff coming on the written side. I'll have Dog Nation daily for you starting Monday at 10 a.m. Big thanks to the folks from Northside Hospital, the sports medicine team there. You can go to sportsmedicine.northside.com or call it 1-855-NH-SPORT. That's 1-855-NH-SPORT. Whether you get banged up or you want to prevent an injury, sort of everything in between, the experts at Northside Hospital Sports Medicine will help you take care of that. And also, before we say goodbye, one final thank you as well to the folks here from the UGA Bookstore, who have outfitted us tonight and been such gracious hosts to us once again. It's our home away from home when we're in Athens. We'll look forward to seeing you. Many of you came by to see us tonight. We appreciate that. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. For Connor Riley, who helped us out here live at the UGA Bookstore, for Michael Carvel back at our Dog Nation World Headquarters studios, thanks for being with us here as a part of the Northside Hospital Postgame Show from the UGA Bookstore. We'll see you again next time.